yo. Then like a young tradition, I sugar. And you monk do from that on Saget, so the detong chibadi. They were Tamti, go, Towa, Togo, when Kashi Namorka, oh, that is more. The captain Shibodo, so the day, no machine, the Namo, you're the Jantel Chasma, this 7 years, she was your tall horses. There doesn't mean a taboo, Kashi Chow mean a taboo, Kashi not even a taboo. Chang Tong Kashi, Chang Tong, that cherry or in Chiba Texan, children, was so bully tender of your head. Like Chang Teng some day. The young Jago Chang Tong, Thomas Chang share. 콜레지 레콩에다 셔디 셔도 쿠토는 창답이죠. 당가 셔바족들라고는 내처럼 셔바족데 저저 셔족에 저 창답이죠데 데코테 에데다데 정말 창조도 셔서 대로 시지 기반을 돌아서는 능이죠 요래 갑들이 초와 족대 가리 대시 봐요. 오 열들이 진실 하고는 롱주 운장문을送了 노용 동화 설마반 롱주 족래 너 어떻게 보도 대체 막 갑들이 세고 돌아냐나 출발해 요 말이 거기 들이냐 봐니 이제 가래는 싸서 봐 가래는 통도 봐 요라 저 미나 저 대답을 차고래 이 대를 졸람서 대를 돌아 강도 졸람 째서 있잖아 라니 소리면서 봐 졸람 가래서 제시디 오고래지 이 사실 동지가 딱 볼때 지시 오고 그런 거야 쉽게 마서 대우선한테 철제 일만 쇼르더니 까들이 좋지 뭐 아마도 어때 막는 있겠나 하는 거지 약간 오늘 요라 좋미나 좋 대는들이 대는 강해요 말이에요 나한테 무거워요 말 나도 무거워요 말 초홀들 그 같아요 좀 보지만 남지 쳤던 도바 파란 이쪽도 공대로지 장이 장도 남도 남도 그만이 장보만 지금 반만지 동문이 장마 직장이요 말이야 장은 동문이 또 봐야 직장이요 말이야 장도 니가 남도래 또 말이 내가 말이지 애도 하고서 돈이 거네 때문에 알겠어 사는 돈이 거니 소스 통신이 차렸죠 너를 맞진 나말도 없어 스마일 관하나도 없어 돼서 오는 거는 대회를 들이다다다디 유모디 좀 대동사제 대 누구나 맞인지 이소나 독진 빠르는 것이 공상을 샬롱나 누군 톡도 배서 뭐시 적라 차 셀레메는 쳇 다소 작가지 주민을 싫어 걸어 어떻게 적을 잡고 좀 되는 초안 가지고 대를 써놓고는 따뜻히 차를 때 중지 때네 들이 마차바를 되네 마차 마타오데 그런 도용임 도용 동화 설마반도 자신 받으면 가양당도 대마진시 텐트바하고 그래서 대외들은 유몽대 좀 대동사제 대
So, when conquered, the demon of afflictions is sealed with bliss and emptiness. So, bliss and emptiness. It refers to all kinds of bliss experienced through the 6 sense perceptions. For example, some people like the taste of sweet, and they think this tastes so good. For example, if you're attached to eating honey, you don't recognize your attachment to the taste of sweet, then the awareness has been lost to the object. And so it is important to recognize. For example, there are some who drink alcohol or who use some tobacco and so forth. For example, those who drink alcohol will drink it even if they know that it will destroy their liver. For example, we have had some people like that in Tibet, some government officials who was told 3 times, do not drink, it's going to lead to your death. And even when he was on his deathbed, he would still hold on to his bottle and say, I'm not going to die from that. But then Even though I told him don't drink it, you're going to die. He did, and then in the end he did die. So we just create suffering through these attachments. So when it arises, when attachment to any of the sense pleasures arises, we need to be mindful and aware and recognize the attachment, the clinging arising in the mind. Then it is okay to actually enjoy a sense pleasure. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, there is no need to abandon the desirables of the senses, but also do not allow the desire to control you. So you can enjoy a sense pleasure, but recognize when that feeling of clinging arises in the mind, and recognize that this is confusion. And then in this way make it all become equal, so that you can drink or eat anything. And so that if that thing that you want to eat, if it is present, it is fine. And if it is not present, it is also fine. In the 37 practices, it says in verse number 36, in whatever you do, always look at the state of your mind. So in all your day-to-day activities, you need to be very mindful. That is what the Buddha had always said. You need to be mindful. You need to possess introspection or conscientiousness. And then even though you do partake of a sense pleasure, you will not become controlled by it. For example, if you eat something sweet and you like the taste of sweet, you do not become attached to it. You will feel that it tastes good, but if it's not here, it is also okay. It does not create any difficulty if the object of your liking is absent. So there's no thought of, I want this, I need this. Or there's also no thought of, I don't want this. That is actually the purpose of our offering, a Gana Chakra feast offering. So that we go beyond our dualistic thinking of this is good and this is bad. So that we release all these concepts of various labels and preferences. Actually, in reality, there is nothing that is inherently clean, but also there's nothing that is inherently dirty. The thoughts of this is clean, this is dirty are just thoughts, and thoughts are empty and do not inherently exist. So Milarepa had said, when you eat within a state of emptiness. When you drink the water of mindfulness. When you sit, stay there without distraction. So the demon of afflictions is sealed with bliss and emptiness. It means that do not be attached to the 5 sense pleasures. Dzogchen Pato Rinpoche said in the words of my perfect teacher, he gave examples for the attachment to the 5 or 6 sense doors, and so one of them is when one is attached to forms. One is like kind of like a fly, like being attracted to a moth, being like a moth that is attracted to a fire flame, and then once it reaches the fire flame, it dies there. So don't be attached to anything, and when a moment of attachment does arise, recognize it and recognize the fault of attachment and see the confusion in your own mind. So again, as it is said in the Samantabhadra prayer, there is no need to abandon the enjoyment of sense pleasures, but also do not allow them to take a hold of you, so that it stays in your mind and you have to think about it over and over again, but rather recognize the confusion when such a thought arises.
Deva kan tar topa de tata musondi takam devare dera tini detong chibade dea rangan devare penna tata talung konin kolo de chonyani jibe 자, 엄마 내 돌디 파모레스. 난 컴트레이든 콜로든 조레스. 얘도 짜든 컴트레이든 마냥다. 내디는 이 디아트란 얘기 그러지. 내가 내 봐야 돼. 세요 뒤담지 조져버리면 조져버리. 이 조져왕들이 납시 초성을 들쳐줘요. 때문에 내가 랑은이 봤는데 대동사제도 내가 뭐 다톡대 샘 내려고 이제 돌려고 그래. 또 담지 돌리들이. 뭔가 참 나도 이제 돌라를 대대와 톡이 그래. 탑담을 들을 때는 내려온 거는 돌지 장도 샘 라지 나카타 대대와 좀 되게 대동사제 대 대소다 첩다가 뒤좀 다들 지디서 뭐지 나서 뭐 남도 사무 스마스마 내서 같이 있다면 제일 지시 남도 사무데 스마스마는 뉴마 제일 뉴마 쉐바요 뭐요. 오. 그때 왜 들리다가 첩다 뒤좀 재미있어니들 세분 내려온 거니 또 정말 세분랑 과다고 샤르고 그래. 다 등이 당신 저등이래. 오. 다 시장 하장치 나디치 따라서 라는 얘기를 해. 나디니 좀 나디치는 작업을 하장 큰도 개용을 해. 나디니 좀 따라서 얘기를 하면 너무 최신 최근에 속차 들어오는 소송도 제시를 해. 얘들은 매일 시장치는 랑랑 세고 진세랑세. 대단 시장 좀 시장 또 먹기 소리지. 대단한 거래. 대면 다르다 그래. 세를 지점도 죽고도 또 죽고는 강박도만은 일이 하거든. 나도 좀 세를 해야만 없어. 양을 답보신 가는 소중히 신 가는 상기를 줘서 양을 좀 호화를 참네. 좀 호화는 참바 대양되니 라동 지도 니를 가시 레게 박차라는 은이라는 그 등에 나디가 돌동에 용도 가시 상속서 받으면 내가 탑라. 그리다 터바를 격전에 무슨 좋아를 들었더니 사제 팸으로 그래. 근데 산재근이 가리로 산재시바 내식도 부르고 그래. 내식이 몸을 쏙 짜찍자요 말이. 이 내식이 뭐 내가 이제 내식이 뭐지 이는지 내는 hin기랑 시기는 탁톡들이 산재 그런 뭐라고 쓴 거리. 감성색이 담지 그게 산재 나타난 냥세. 다 도미래라 줄래로만 말하지. 오, 세부대로 또 들으니까 상지도 있지. 사공도 저는 나사는 상지는 상지지 용어만. 됐다고 하고, 저한테 좀 가지지. 저 돈만이 계시를 내집리지. 저 능이 뭐거나 같이 산속서 능이는 이거 말이야. 능이 말람다고 좀 맞다고 말하는 게 쏘는데 말람이 바로 제미나 남말롱도 고말롱도 제바해서 사지 삼치에 좋아를 넣는 힘람도 통속을 그래. 마술은 되는 대단 몇 년이 지나는 송성은 것을 라마들이 좋으래. 라마라 비슷하게 송하다 하겠지 모르지. 담미소 잡성 몸자쳐 가동들 따뜻히 쏘게 맞춰서 남자들은 맞춰서 광로 주자죠 되래. 설명서 가고 도그요 말이. 그봐 통속만 나는 고도 때려오지. 서지 고도 샤라로 꾸바라고 차리지 하고 말이. 그래서 좀 답이 용기 됐다고 그래. 됐다고 하면 딴 처아들 계시면 세물 계시면 받다는 좀 나도 좀 재미있어왕이 있어. 다 세물 시키면 세물이 시야요 말이야. 남까시 하면 나 저번에 동안가가 고사자면 샘 남까를 했어. 샘 남까 땅에 세물 내려도 둘이 세물 남까 체배 받아 차고 그래. 우리 세물 내려도 샘들 오미따와 로그렇게 뛰는 바로 오미따와 가야면 집아. 야. 대저리 롱레그티니 냠냠 그랬더니 냠냠 사치도 독시. 내가 누구도 답지디 가야면 집부터 봐고 그래. 누가서 또 세비 직접 만지면 세비 통솔 다 세모 통송지. 네가 띠바 통솔 둘이 샘나 가라 탐려 그래. 다 추가를 상지해. 그 나파를 틀면 말로요 말이. 네가 샘 돈이 hinge서 그래. 네랑 이 나파를 띠다 잡아. 그래. 마토가 생긴다면 내가 그래. 그간 자롱 초들 뒤 이걸 약간 잡아니만 하지 이런 거는데 나 탐지 14시에 산지 사와서 참아 이제 늦게 탐지 사진을 사와서 홀로 잡고 뭐네 사진이 찍자요 말이지. 내가 라는데도 말안 그래 박사 이 박사도 좀 따동해는 줄 뒤에 탐지 동해를 줘야지. Deva the Deva Jatan de Parcher. Oh, Koto Sanchok Semkin, Dandi me partana. This don't dance Sanchok Lang de Lohaco. Oh, the dinner in the rich of that to meet Chinese. Tashitame Hako on the Ranga on Ashitaman village. Lopoda to Roy in Bata village. The Roy in Bata lady blade still in Yaponos. The Khenpo go on me, Pachadi, Sharman, Malamone Pacha Sharman. They are the same Pachari, Malamus Matabaret. I'm same Pachadi Tamas over them. Tamas on the Karikazono. That the Dandi at each other on Pachari. That Dandi may part of them. Dandi may part of her. That's not so simple. Sanchok some number or that's the Sanchok some somebody. Semi, but semi get there as about going to the house. The theatre. That's simply sitting in the Tatar Hako. Oh, not sitting on those. So that they're going to meet each other.
So bliss and emptiness, the ultimate bliss abides actually within our channels and elements. And regarding the meaning of empty bliss, it means to understand that bliss does not arise from an external factor, but it actually is innate to one's own body and mind. For example, when we engage in the practices of channels, winds, and drops, such as in the Chakra practice, then the central channel is said to be Vajrayogini, and the drops or the bindus in the channel is Chakra. And if one is able to retain the drops without having them decline, without losing the drops, then bliss will pervade the body just naturally. And then any outer condition that induces bliss is just a supporting condition, like a companion, for example. It's just a supporting condition, but it's not the actual origin of our bliss. And if it appears that way, that is confusion. The bliss really is innate to our own body. And the ultimate essence of bliss is found within the fundamental nature of the mind. It is when all afflictive emotions and all conceptual thinking, when the conceptual mind ceases, we experience great bliss. That is our true nature. And there are many methods for recognizing that. So the nature that we recognize is referred to as Vajradhara. Vajradhara refers to the unchanging, space-like nature of the mind that is innately blissful. So when the demon of the afflictions, when it is conquered, it is sealed with bliss and an emptiness. The next line says, when conquering the demon of death, one gains power of immortal life. Lord Jigten Sungen said in the Gongchik that the seed of the prior moment of consciousness or the seed of the latter moment of consciousness is the prior moment. So the later moment of consciousness is present in the prior moment of it. And so for this reason, what consciousness is an ongoing stream. And so the Lord of Death is to conquer the Lord of Death is to recognize that stream of consciousness. When one realizes the nature of the mind, it is realized like space. Of all the different kinds of sufferings, our greatest fear is the suffering of death. Often people get so angry because of self-grasping that they are able to even commit suicide. That is the fault of self-grasping. That is, the ice block has become so cold that it begins to crack open, and then somebody commits suicide. even though our greatest fear, our greatest suffering is actually death. For example, even an animal would protect their own lives more than anything else. And then we have human beings going around killing others and even killing themselves. So that is really the ultimate ignorance that arises from a mind of hatred or anger. So in order for such a solidified mind not to arise, we have to recognize that my mind can actually not die. The body is like an empty house. And when the body dies, then the mind goes on. Either it could take birth anywhere in the Pure Lands, in the 10 directions, one can attain enlightenment, or the mind will continue to wander anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. And even if one takes birth in the 6 realms of samsara, there are 2 ways of taking birth, either for one's own purpose or for the purpose of others. When it is for one's own purpose, then it is one takes birth due to the awakening of one's own karmic habitual tendencies that manifest in various forms of suffering, all arising out of self-grasping. But then there is others, the bodhisattvas, who also intentionally manifest in order to benefit sentient beings. For example, there are Buddhas in the 6 realms of samsara, appearing in all the realms. So what is actually a Buddha? A Buddha should be understood to be Buddha nature, that everyone possesses. There is no living being that does not possess Buddha nature. And because we possess Buddha nature, we have the natural potential to cultivate great compassion, because that is the nature of Buddha nature. In the Samantabhadra prayer, also it says, sentient beings of the 3 realms are actually identical to me, but they have become confused, being carried away by meaningless activities. When one sees the nature of the mind, that is when one sees the Buddha. That is when the ice block has melted into water, and one realizes there has never been another Buddha than my own mind. And then all death actually becomes emptiness. Even though death is empty, it is still important to consider karma, because if you do not want to suffer, then you need to avoid the causes of suffering. Milarepa said that when you realize that the dream perceptions and the daytime perceptions are one and the same, you have actualized meditation. So those bodhisattvas or practitioners who recognize that, they will see all difficult circumstances, whatever arises, as a dream or like an illusion. The Buddhas do not hold on to anything, as they see that everything is dreamlike by nature. For example, when I was in prison, I shared my time with many great Lamas there, and these great Lamas were actually extremely happy during the time in prison, and they felt that it is like a vacation, taking a rest there, and they can still secretly recite their prayers, even though they couldn't really speak it out loud, or we were not allowed to hold a mala and things like that. But they could still secretly do their practices, like the 7-line prayer and so forth. And other people would not know that they were doing that, and they just thought that they are mute or something, they can't talk. But actually they were doing their practice. And so they used that time to engage in practice. And that is the quality of the holy Dharma. So here, when conquering the Lord, or the demon of the Lord of Death, one gains power of immortal life. So here one recognizes, and that is the quality of the Dharma, one recognizes that the mind cannot die, because the mind is like space, and space cannot die. It is just the body that can die. We exchange the 5 elements comprising our body for a new body. But the mind will not die because it is like space. And that is, for example, recognized through the view of the Madhyamaka, the middle way, through logical reasoning and the scriptures, where the essential instruction really is not to grasp at anything. And then from the perspective of experience and practice, that view is resolved through Mahamudra or Dzogchen. But again, we come back to the same essence, not to grasp at anything. When there is not a single grasping in your mind, and you see the mind that doesn't grasp at anything, you are actually seeing the nature of the mind. And then the mind consciousness dissolves into space as you attain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. And when consciousness dissolves into space and you attain enlightenment, you do not just disappear, but what remains is a state of emptiness and compassion. Space remains, and from space again arise the clouds and rain falling down, warm rain, a summer shower, falling down upon those ice blocks of sentient beings who have not yet realized the true nature of their mind. Lord Jigten Sumgön also had said that everything that is done in the field of knowable things, so in this world, is done by Buddha. So there is nothing whatsoever in this world that is not done by Buddha. Everything is done by the same sort of intelligence. Just temporarily, because beings cling to their habitual tendencies, they keep creating their own suffering over and over again. So in our prayer we say, may beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. That cause of happiness is the relative bodhicitta. Through bodhicitta, self-grasping diminishes, and when that diminishes, you will see the ultimate bodhicitta, which is the nature of your mind. So when conquering the demon of death, you recognize that there is actually no death. I actually cannot die. Just my body will die, and that is just like exchanging old clothing for new clothing. And because I cannot die, I have to be very mindful when it comes to observing karma, cause and effect, because I do not want to suffer. And since I don't want to suffer, if I'm not careful, then I will continue to follow my habitual tendencies. And these tendencies are imprints that will manifest like dream-like illusions, which are not real, but they will manifest as my own experience. So what purifies this is the altruistic mind. The reason why I'm following my karmic tendencies is because I cling to a self, and I develop thoughts of attachment and aversion. And the only way to eliminate the self is bodhicitta, the twofold bodhicitta. So I need to cultivate the four immeasurables by all means. So the demon of the Lord of Death is conquered when you recognize that I actually cannot truly die.
Di chonde tong saje tepsi bate gowa nyoma to pasam rugori mato te chebe gowa tano tanyu mongi shiret te kona tini angin chegiri tini sanyi bakcha sengu tolana bardu chongi dungi namjing shayo che dele tini nagi dungi nyamsin nyong chokui dungi 다른 게 되고 말이 대통령 놈들면 예를 들어 기독이야 체면 당황론도 좀 이제 말해서 말이 정말 기독이야 체면과 가르치를 제거거든요. 곰자 거리지. 곰자는 새로 따 거리. 새로 따라 가리. 다다 답들이 우리 마테라서 사도 동망고 송요래. 신의 상통지 상통도 따와 되게 신의 라드님 상통기 가다 니바로 보지 되게 성원다. 신의 라드 상통지바데 삭지 적지 오만 강시에나 신의 라드 상통지 봐도 지만 우리 동 다시는 lang tong da de ngi mang tong de da tong song si ngi mang tong an ka de o ku ji da ji ni yo si se de do do cho de da da ngi tong o da ji ni me ba hai yo ba ya ba ye me ba ya me yo ba ma yin na kwa da cha so me ba ma yin sa ra ji da de da chi ni ta tang do da da ngi de pa de minga ja ta ma no sa tong de ma re sa tong de ngo de cha da ko de zang ma ye sa ba ya la tong ma yin o se sa tong ma de de ma ni cha ma de se to ba be cha ta lo ye me sa ra ji yin ta ji ko de chu ta de cho la ya tong mo ram de cha ta lo cha rom cha ta ba ma re de ma de cha ta la de de na nong chi na de le de ne je ma na be nam to chu ko ten ba la ram no go go ma ma se ram 냠용的这样子，这没把做这个，原本那都操把劲那都热上了的了，原本做的热的没得，搞到的了，人家不过这那么讲不能说么嘞，我说用的看样没做不出的呢，把那人家不过这那么讲不啥什么，第二马上就这样嘛的，哦，那个那个，这了这些的讨的，你莫让厂子帮人洗澡了没？유목은 창조거리지. 유목이 다다다 유목변에 지랑다고 내 가르치거든. 뭐가 다 나중에 속체다. 잡는 나사다 동했는다고. 뒤뒤는 다다 마속을 내가지는. simply 무서 답이 잡았다 빠더니 무서워 싸우러 싸움다고 말이야. 라힘 시대 답이. 무서워 짜증 떠보는데 짜면서 약본데 떠라 가보여. 내가 말했더니 무서워서 못했지. 내가 제가 샘때는 말 빠는 때는 다디 속도 다니는데 나잘 때는 세상들 다도 되는 거야. 이 잡으려면 그냥 된다고 영어를 해. 이모도 되려면 걔는 남도 죽을 텐데 남도 영뭐 세상에 나를 나도 다들 될 때는 될 때, 다니는 때는 나지 나에 나오냐 말이지. 나오냐 만디 니네 마중 조직 않으면 만진 지어치지. 좀 답지 되는 경우요래. 나한테 다지 일상 나한테 다지 야. 걔는 내로 도선다 남도 죽을 때만 이제 따와 다지님이 하고 선 찾나. 같은 거 공자도 지금 대 남도 죽을 때 말아. 라는 거만 맞아라. 냠냠들 내가 이제 제대로 다니 못하는 또 말이 있지. 네가 가양되나? 사이야 눈이 영후요래. 거기 잡서 리고 와게서. 눈이 영을 때다. 눈이 좀 많다만 때다다니 뭐가 냠냠는데와. 좋은지 네 몸대 토대로 사게 터서를 때다. 접다도 좀 재미있어. 이성. 뒤니 접다도 좀 시대에 봐. 하고 때 고아래. 요아도 세븐 나파다. 세븐 나파니시야. 영적 마음을 잘하지. 세븐 나가는 제 마을에 남영수에 되네. 나도 기분이 영적이에요. 세븐 나가 체면과 차음을 때는 여살 마음을 줘서 이제 여살 마다가 생각을 내려다 딴 갔다 그래야지. 남이 여살더니 라마 기비신 갈 사지 깔때네 일레기네 따뜻한 거지. 따하고 탑let이네. 그냥 메시지를 하지 봐. 라면 먹을 때랑 때 빨리네. 그랬다. 라고 뭐 조선 쌀마음 좋지. 태선매 봐. 태선매 봐. 나지 이메가 나 갔다 그랬는데 또 뭐라? 그랬대 다쳤다. 은혜 청소. 다시 한번 남자마다 장소들 하고 두고 그래. 니들이 하장 담담한 거지. 나는 게 고아tum을 물어서 그건 무슨 뭐지? 고아림보라데 고리로지. 냠 나은라데 양내 대바다 돼서 다른 냠게 다 파여거나. 나쁘지 마도 파로들이 라로지. 똑바로 파로는 보여면 sem나 태토면 다서 하고. 근데 참말 안 해니요 그래. 대강은 빠시죠 벌안 딴데. 다도 따위 타도 공비 양생용. 따도가 소리는 베네. 도바도 소들려 같이 해서 따와고 맞죠. 레버 가래. 레버 걸제도 봐. 있어. 대 걸제들 샘을. 레버 샘스도 봐. 임들아 그래서 레버 샘을 나도 샘들랑 싸마 차서 데이터와 하고는 되잖아. 고만 냠형면 되어서 아주 지고 요래. 이 받을 때는 다 삼조에.
So again, when conquered, coming back to the demon of the afflictions is sealed with bliss and emptiness. And so for all of these, actually, we need to first understand, then experience, and then finally realize. So it's not enough to only understand. Even if you understand that all afflictive emotions are primordial wisdom, you will still encounter difficulties later on. If you still carry these habitual tendencies with you, then later in the bardo, they will naturally manifest. And even in this life, they will create all kinds of suffering. If we leave it with a mere understanding, we will not be able to tolerate or accept our difficulties. Milarepa had said, when you realize that happiness and sadness, happiness and suffering are one and the same, then you have received the highest instruction. That is the highest instruction. So how does the difference between happiness and suffering come about? So first, once we have understood, we need to meditate. Or how do we come to this point where there is no difference? We need to meditate. Meditation means to look at your own mind, the true nature of your mind. There are many different methods that help us to recognize the nature of our mind or intrinsic awareness. For example, the instructions on Mahamudra and Dzogchen, or shamatha and vipassana. The ultimate view is actually vipassana. In the 37 practices, it says that one needs to possess a state of vipassana, a special insight that is founded based on perfect shamatha, calm abiding. Also, this was one thing that Nyemba Rinpoche recently taught on. So whatever we speak on, whatever we practice, whether it is Mahamudra, Dzogchen, or Madhyamaka, ultimately, actually, it comes all down to vipassana, the special insight, and really nothing else. It is to gain an actual insight, a true viewing of your nature, the nature of your mind. And seeing your true nature is to see that which has always been there, but you haven't seen it before. So before, you haven't seen it because you believed in the existence of self and other. This has caused the mind to become solidified into this self, this me. And because it is solidified in this way, we perceive others. When you truly see your true nature, you realize that there is no self and other. And your true nature can neither said to be existing, nor can it said to be non-existing. It cannot said to be existing because it is like space. But it also cannot said to be non-existing because it also is naturally clear. When you try to analyze it, all extremes, all limitations fall apart. It is beyond all limitations. Even if you receive 1,000 different pith instructions, ultimately you always come back to the same essence, the nature of your mind that is clear and empty. Also, for example, the image of Samantabhadra and the Yab-Yum aspect represents this nature. The clarity is represented by the Yab and the emptiness by the Yum, the female. So those who have realized the nature of their mind has become like hot water that melts the ice block. And even though they still see samsara and nirvana, they see the various appearances, they can no longer freeze into an ice block. They have realized the illusory nature of all appearances. Also, Milarepa had said, when thoughts dissolve into the Dharmakaya, in order for thoughts to dissolve into the Dharmakaya, you need to meditate, and this meditation must be imbued with experience, which means an ongoing state of experience. It means to recognize each and every thought and feeling, afflictive emotion arising in your mind. Each of the 6 afflictive emotions as it arises. This also is taught in Chamgyön Kongtrul's Calling the Guru from Afar, which also is an all-inclusive teaching, very useful for people like myself who have not much learning. And also my father actually said that this particular text is extremely precious. Again, in this text, Calling the Guru from Afar, everything is included. So also Milarepa had said that aside from exposing the falsehood of afflictive emotions, there is no other perfection of primordial wisdom than that. So we need to see the falsehood in the afflictive emotions, to see what they actually are. For example, when strong anger arises, we need to recognize how does it arise. It arises from self-grasping, and self-grasping is really, nowadays especially, everyone possesses self-grasping to a very high degree, too much. And that is because we see all these troubles in the world. There was the disease, and then even though we had the disease, on top of that, people even made war and used other human beings for their own purposes, just like they are objects. For example, when we are, or like grass, for example, just basically making use of them. Normally, when we cut grass, even then we are being very, very careful not cut the flowers and so on. But these people, they just destroyed a lot of other people without any regard for their lives. And that all arises out of ignorance, because self-grasping is too strong. And then from that arises pride, from that arises hatred and jealousy. All the problems in the world come from these negative emotions. For example, the afflictive emotion of anger first arises from grasping at a self. So first there is the sense of me. It's me. And so that leads to pride. It's all about me. And then we don't recognize the fault in that. And then all the problems arise from that in this world. We are grasping at a self that does not actually exist. And that leads to the perception of others and so forth. So when one recognizes this chain of events, all these thoughts arising in the mind, one leading to another, and one sees the true nature of them, then thoughts dissolve into Dharmakaya, as Milarepa had said. And one recognizes the non-duality of self and others. So that is the meditation to establish, and then we need to remain within that meditation. Within this meditative state, then whatever thoughts arise dissolves into the Dharmakaya. That is the experience to be gained that Milarepa spoke about. The meditation must be imbued with experience. So whatever thought or afflictive emotion arises, you sustain a state of awareness. And then again, suffering will come your way. For as long as there is karma, suffering will arise. As Jiten Sumgön had said, that which wanders in samsara is the body. But we need to see the illusory nature of what arises. And this is how our practice becomes imbued with experience. So here these two verses, again, are linked to each other. Like the first and the second, also the second and third. So when conquered, the demon of afflictions is sealed with bliss and emptiness, and when conquering the demon of death, one gains power of immortal life. So these are also connected to one another. The experience to be gained is that mind is like space. When you recognize that, awareness merges with space, which is just like a child reuniting with its mother, or we call it the uniting of the mother and child luminosity. So this is how it is explained in the Drupchen teachings, for example. First, the mind becomes like space. It merges, awareness merges with space. And this merging is the merging of two kinds of luminosity. So the mother luminosity is the basic, fundamental luminosity ever present. And then the child luminosity is the luminosity that we have practiced along the path. And so when awareness merges with space, then these two kinds of luminosity also become one. So there are many methods to recognize this. We are introduced to the nature of mind by our gurus, the spiritual masters, through the words of the Buddha. According to the practice lineage of blessings, we recognize it through faith and devotion. So through faith and devotion, the two luminosities merge. And when they merge, the mind becomes free of doubt. There's no more doubt that there are no self and other. When one has seen the nature of mind as space, one truly overcomes the demon of death. And so this is a very a profound point to understand. But it's not enough to understand this point. So understanding it is to know that the thoughts and appearances are just like waves on water. It is to know that, but we also need to experience that. So as Milarepa said, experience, meditation must be imbued with experience. So first, actually Khenpo Münzer Rinpoche had said, first we only understand, but then this understanding is momentary. And it's a fleeting experience, and all like meditative experiences are like a mist in the sky, like a cloud that won't actually last. But realization is vast, like space. When you realize the view without any doubt, then that becomes steadfast. That is the ultimate kila, the wisdom awareness kila. So first we need to decide upon the view. We need to understand it, but then we need to experience it through meditation, and then apply that in a timely manner in our day-to-day conduct. So the view, meditation, and the result, the conduct, and then the result is the attainment of the four kayas. And the four kayas are also only one's own mind. The fruition is one's own mind. When one's mind becomes completely purified, then that is the fruition. So in order to reach the fruition, based on one's understanding, it's very important to gain the experience through meditation practice. So for now, we'll stop the teachings here.
From the mantra garland, light rays and a second garland issue forth, passing from my mouth into the mouth of the consort. The self-resounding mantra proclaimed by the inconceivable dakas and dakinis in the consort's four chakras arouses the mind stream. From the consort's secret place, the mantra garland enters my vajra, and the deities residing within my channels proclaim the sound of the mantra. I visualize the mantra garland dissolving ceaselessly into my heart.
Binzaye anzete aparanzete marasena dramantanaya savandene pahom Om Benza Gele Gelayan Zahom Paho Kadam Gayan Zayan Benzaya Anza Sarvam Bene Bahom Be Om Benza Gele Gelayan Zahom Paho Kadam Gayan Zayan Benzaya Anza Marasena Dhamadhanaya Sarvam Bene Bahom Be Om Benza Gele Gelayan Zahom Paho Kadam Binzaya Anzade Aparanzade Marasena Dhamadhanaya Sarvam Bene Bahom Be Om Benza Gele Gelayan Zahom Paho Kadam Anzade Aparanzade Marasena Dhamadhanaya Sarvam Bene Bahom Be Om e u le an ka na cha ja na ta na pa ma yara la wa shaka sa om e u le an ka na cha ja na ta Oma le ang ka na cha na ta na ba ma ya la wa sha ka sa om benza sa do sa ma manupalaya benza sa Gayo me baba, Zubo Jayo me baba, Anarato me baba, Sarvaside me Jayato, Sarvasama, Siddhan Shayam Guru Hong, ha, Guru Bangava, Sarvata Tangata, Dhanjama, Mimman, Dhanjabava, Ma, Samaya, Sato, Om Banja Sato Samaya, Manupalaya, Banja Sato Tinopa, Siddhan Jato me baba, Siddhan Sayo me baba, Subhajaya me bhava, Anurato me bhava, Sarvaside me Jayata, Sarva Karma Siddhane, Jedan Shiryam Guru, Ho Bangave, Sarva Tatanga Tantanjama, Mimman Bhava Ma, Samaya Sato, Om Banja Sato Sama. Tinopa, Tidandado me bhava, Soto Kaya me bhava, Subhajaya me bhava, Anurato me bhava. Sarvaside me Jayata, Sarva Karma Siddhane, Siddham Shayam Guru Hong, Ho Banga, Sarva Tatanga Tantanjama, Mimman Bhava Ma, Samaya Sato, Ome Dharma, Hida Parbhava, Hedin Tishin, Tatanga To, Heyava Den Tishin Zayo, Evan Bodhama, Shamana Yesova, Ome Dharma, Hida Parbhava, Hedin Tishin, Tatanga To, Heyava Den Tishin, Narode Vambode Mahashamana Yesova, Ome Dharma, Heda Parbhava, Hedin Tishin, Tatanga, Heyava Den Narode Vambode Mahashamana. So vai oi bajem purpela doje jena san wen je bamba gason to yon jele do ba men gan chen nyam ja ja to je Lama Rinzen La Tang Kando Dan Jianong Kolong Hunju Toda Wang Jen Yen Dun Tene Jen Ko Ne Dan Nam Yoruba Nam 心间百间头则我全不公。Your Randa Wanda, Kala Samara,
Gracias.